Mr. McGee, don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
You are about to listen to the Totally Super Awesome 80s Reboot Overdrive podcast.
This podcast is our fan tribute to the Incredible Hulk TV show. Be advised that has been exposed to radiation and we caution to listen at your own risk. You have now entered GammaCast.
And welcome to the GammaCast. I'm your host, Charlie, the Professor Esser. And with me, as always, is the wonderful, the intellectual, the brilliant
80s music girl. Hi, Charlie.
Hey, Rose. So glad to have you. 80s music girl.
Thank you.
The
So glad to
most
be here.
Important member of the 80s family here. Tonight's episode, Season 4, Episode 18, Patterns. David is working for a New York clothes manufacturer who's banking everything on his daughter's fashion show. A couple of loan sharks start using force to get their money back, and we can all imagine how that works out for them. First air date.
Yeah.
May 22nd, 1981. This is a really interesting episode, if for nothing else, just the fact that David really isn't sticking his nose where it doesn't belong, which is not something we see very common for him. This is a moment where other people are putting his nose where it doesn't belong.
Exactly.
And, it's an interesting dynamic in it, in the sense, don't want to get too political here, but the fact that the father, Eddie Brandeis, played by the wonderful, Sam Brandeis, played by Eddie Barth, really is banking it all on some random drifter rather than his daughter.
Yeah.
And it is such a weird moment for you there, because it's like, here's his incredibly competent daughter who he is at the same time as a designer is banking everything on. But still, he's putting David into promoting David. Although, one imagines part of that might be, if we want to give some value to what Eddie is, or what Sam is doing, is that he doesn't want his daughter to be on the hook. He'd rather have the random drifter he just picked up be on the hook for whatever over promises he makes.
Yes, and he's really good at that.
Yeah, well, this is a wonderful bit in that we do see that David is outmatched in his own ability to manufacture a story.
Yeah. Yeah, he's definitely got his match there.
yeah. Although it is nice. I really like this story. I certainly love the father-daughter dynamic between Liz and Sam. Because you can in some ways relate to the idea of the father holding on to his paternalistic role longer than he should. And I think that is what the story is about. Is that this father cannot stop imagining his daughter in diapers. You know,
It's just very worrying
yeah. Well,
on any level.
hey, let's not go there, but let's just say, it is this idea, you have a child and you do love your child and
Yeah.
you imagine them growing to be great men and women of the world, but
Mhm.
you always hold in your heart this idea of them as your child, and you have this natural affinity towards protection. Well, at the same
Mhm.
time, you know, you do want them to grow.
Right.
And I think in Sam's case here, he has the worst of both worlds. He
Yeah.
has let his daughter grow to be a great designer, we're told.
Mhm. Yes.
Um, you know, but for what it's worth, when they make the point that, oh, Liz is doing the designs, everyone is like, oh yeah, okay, that's fine, yeah, you didn't
Right.
tell me that. When he was
Mm.
dealing with his first creditor, and he's like, hey, I can't give you the credit, and it's like, look, Liz's designs are coming up, and after that, they're like, oh, stop, you say it's Liz's designs. Liz, we respect her at this point. You, Sam, not so much.
Yeah.
Liz hasn't really bothered us this much yet. So,
No.
but and it's great that he has let or encouraged Liz to
Yes.
grow in this field. But at the
Mhm.
same time, when it really comes down to the nuts and bolts of the business, he's not ready to let go.
No.
And that family dynamic is the crux of this episode, which is both interesting and possibly frustrating about it.
Mhm.
Now, you just recently rewatched these episodes, correct?
Yes.
Yes. I'm a little. I have watched these episodes recently, but it's been a little while, so I may be a
Mhm.
little short on the direct details of when Hulk outs occur.
Right.
But we do find in this episode, Sam and Liz and David. David moving very
Mhm.
rapidly up the ranks,
Mhm.
because he is a competent man,
Mhm.
and so he is being put into roles that other people are going to see him at.
Mhm.
And we see, like I say, it's an interesting thing for me with Sam, whether or not he's putting David in these roles so he's the one that gets beat up, not Liz. Um,
Well, mm,
yeah.
I think with that whole scenario, I think you know um, he he sees the competency of David, but he also recognizes like you know duh, he's a guy, so he would prefer to have another male alongside him, even though Saul is what, chicken liver? I mean, he's been probably running the business, you know, with his
Hmm.
eyes closed all these years, and he gets things done too, but I don't know, David's younger and he's got more awareness about him. And yeah, I really think that he is trying to protect his daughter. Well, that and pawn her off on him. So, like, really? You want your daughter to marry a perfect stranger she took
Well,
in off the street?
to
Yeah,
be fair,
sure.
even though they don't know it, he is a doctor. So,
This is true.
you know,
However,
it's just like, even though we don't know it, we get this
yeah,
we get this strong doctor vibe from it, and we do want our daughter to marry a doctor. I don't think there
yeah,
is a man
it's
alive who does
not
not want his daughter to marry a doctor.
absolutely.
A doctorate is an impressive degree. There is, whether it's an
Mm,
MD, a PhD, even
mm,
an FAD, as Stephen Colbert has. That is sorry, DFA.
DFA.
Um, that is still an impressive thing that you got someone to give you one of those.
Yeah.
They don't just give those out at the corner store. You have to
No,
either, at least from accredited universities. There's a lot of
Yes.
unaccredited places that you could get one of those at, but this is a real doctor who is here. Who, even if he doesn't state it, you can feel it. You can sense that about him. That even
he's
if
a
you
good
don't
guy.
know that he's a doctor, you know that he could have been.
Right.
You know.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the thing there. So we do see David being pushed up the line.
Mm-hmm.
We do have the loan sharks arrive.
Yes.
And, because the idea is, well, we must lean on this guy. Because whereas certain people may be more willing to say, hey, we recognize your own, we may be willing to recognize our relationship, the loan shark is not there. And, am I mistaken, or was there a young upstart in this loan shark situation as well again?
Yes, there was.
There was.
It was
Okay.
it was the son of the
Yes.
original loan shark, and he was quite the character.
Yeah, well,
He learned a lot from Dad.
Yeah, but it strikes me as interesting because it wasn't that long ago when we had the driver episode.
Mm-hmm.
Where we had this young guy who seems like he's on the inside, but at the same time wants to tear it down, wants to make his own territory within this territory.
Yeah.
And again, we see how these chaotic elements in the old guard are the ones that are the problem.
Right.
And of course the problems occur because you never know when there's a Hulk there.
Yeah.
So when they come in and they decide to lean on everything.
Mm-hmm.
And is this the scene where David gets his arm ironed, or is that the second scene?
Yeah. No, this is
That
the
is the
Hulk
first
out.
scene, yes.
Yeah.
And for the life of me, that whole, getting David off panel so we don't see, so that no one associates him with the Hulk, is always amusing to me as one in the aware. But it does make this this nice point. We do see, because of course he's already told everyone that David's the guy. And again, where I do think that putting David in this position is to protect Liz.
Yes.
It is to say, the guy you want to beat up, here's the guy to beat up. Don't beat up me, don't beat up my daughter, beat up this guy. Beat up this random drifter we happen
He's
to...
young, he can take it.
Well, exactly. But of course, that gets us our first Hulk.
Mm-hmm.
And that does not go well for the mobsters.
No, it doesn't.
No, because of course that's the thing, is like when you're, not for nothing, this is not a universe in which superheroes are commonplace.
Yeah.
And so when you beat a guy up, you kind of expect him to stay beat up. And when you suddenly encounter gigantic green monsters, it does take you aback, without a doubt.
Yeah, it's a bit disconcerting. I'll give him that.
Yes. But we do have this. We do have David, beat back the bad guys, of course, as he does. And we are moving towards our eventual fashion show. Because the idea is that once we put on the show in very Andy Hardy style, once we put on the show, then everything's okay. We just gotta put on a show.
Everything's gonna be great.
Everything's gonna be great. Everything's gonna be perfect. And I'm not a fashionista. I don't really know the fashion industry that well.
Right.
But I do know a lot of pop culture about fashion does seem to hang on that big show.
Yes.
So I am inclined to believe that what we are seeing here is accurate for the scene. That yes, we will have our big show. The buyers will see it, and then they will know that the name to look for next season is Liz Brandeis. Brandeis.
Yeah. Yes.
So, and for what it's worth, our father Sam, he makes again lots of promises that he knows he can't keep about when money will be showing up, even though obviously the money can't show up at that point.
No.
It's like he's promising it on the contracts that we'll get once we have the show.
Yeah.
Even though obviously, once the show occurs, after the show, we can maybe start, neggling on the contracts, but we're not going to have a final contract, 30 minutes into the show. And
well, no, but remember, they were banking on those blouses that they sold that one distributor forever.
Yeah.
Remember, that was their bread and butter, and then they came in and terminated the contract.
Yeah.
So
and
ultimately,
and that is the thing. And thank you for reminding me of that, because I'd actually forgotten about that particular point.
not a problem.
Yeah, so they did have a constant, they had a cash flow. This actually reminds me, when I was when I had first moved to New Jersey, I had a gig with a company that was formerly the production arm of Major League Baseball, but then got spun off into its own company, and then Major League Baseball took their own production in-house.
Right.
And they had a set of clients that were their bread and butter, that were just, they had this thing, that they had this influx of capital that they knew and they relied on. And then they started to work out where they would find their next business lines. And it did work for a very long time. But of course, as with anything where you have that line coming in, you have to deal with the fact that other lines exist, and that line may not always be there for you. And at the worst possible moment, that line gets pulled for Brandeis Fashions, which I don't think was their name.
No, it was Brandis Designs.
Yeah.
That was.
Oh, was
Liz
Brandis
and
the
Sam.
name of it? I'm not. I don't recall. But
I can't remember who the distributor was for the blouses.
But that's fine. But the point is that the blouses did not go where they were going to go, and of course, in a fashion industry, when you're expecting an order and that order cancels, you actually have a bunch of blouses now.
Yeah.
That now you have to sell on the cheap.
Mm-hmm.
So not only is it a loss of future capital, it's a loss of current capital.
Yes.
So they are really stuck, and so everything is reliant on the show.
Yeah.
And
not to mention the fact you had to can everybody.
Yeah,
everyone
has to get Well, I believe officially they were layoffs.
Well, yeah, it was the 80s.
Yeah, the idea of a layoff is, we have to let you go, but we are going to call you back.
Right.
As soon as things get better, we're going to call you back. We want you all here. We really love you guys, but we can't meet your salary, and we feel it's wrong to we feel it's wrong to write you a bounce check.
Right. Even though they did.
Well, yeah, and they did and
several times.
Yeah, for what it's worth, and yeah, that is that great moment with the secretary at the front at the start of it, where she's like, "Look, you can bounce everybody else's check, don't bounce mine," And of course that is, I think, the way so many people approach their finances.
Yeah.
But they have gone bare bones.
Yeah.
And of course, Liz is still at the factory late. She's not at the show. And David.
Oh, because she had to go back and get the white wool suit.
Yes, that's right. That's right. She had to go back for something, and then David has to go back to get her. And of course, we get a nice hostage situation. We get the decision by the mobsters. Well, we'll just burn it down, and we'll take from the insurance.
Right.
But of course, they did not count on a Hulk.
Yes.
That I think is the crux of every story is they did not count on a Hulk.
Right. It's only that we're really the way life happens,
Yeah, well, what I'll say is it's always amazing to me that Hulks aren't more of a concern for people. Granted, the National Register is not the most reputable of papers.
Yeah.
But honestly, it always surprises me that no one else is picking up on the Hulk story. Because it does seem to be like kind of a big story that there's this big green guy running around.
Yeah.
You know what it is? Here's what I'll tell you. It's like there was a sense of a staid fifth. I'm going to say fifth estate in the 80s. That the idea of this that the news production was meant to be of a better quality. And so it didn't matter if you had 20 people saying, "Oh yeah, I saw a big green guy run down Broadway." It's not a story that the news was going to pick up. Now nowadays the Hulk would be everywhere. David Banner couldn't get a cup of coffee without saying, "Hey, you look a bit like that scientist guy from back in the day."
Yeah.
But this is the delightful conceit of the Incredible Hulk, is that it does exist at the end of a previous era before we go into our modern era of everyone knowing everything about everyone. And that is why we have nostalgia for the 80s, which is why the 80s Reboot channel exists.
Exactly.
Moving right along. So David, of course, does Hulk out.
Yes.
As the factory is burning. I don't recall if he really saves the factory for the most part, but he does.
He does.
He does.
Yeah. Okay. He wasn't able to get the fire to go quite as much as he wanted, and the Hulk looked over and saw the paper burning and went, "Hey, that looks dangerous. Let me put it out." And he throws a cage door over it, and voila.
There we go.
No fire.
Problem solved. Okay, there we go. And so the fire gets put out. Liz gets taken to the event. All is well.
All is well.
And
well, kinda.
Well, as well as you can expect in these kind of situations.
Yeah.
But the point is that Liz's designs are the bee's knees.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure that one out.
Well, it's the 80s. I mean, and it's the early 80s. It wasn't like the early 80s didn't have it as, really when we think about 80s fashions, we're really looking like mid to late 80s. We're looking when we think about shoulder pads and
we didn't have the savoir faire that it needed until later on.
Yeah, that's like 83, 84 at the earliest, and we're still in 81. So right now we're at the tail end of 70s fashion, which is something we all regret, I think.
I would think so. Yes.
And so it does. But for what people wanted at the time, I think these were probably top drawer fashions as far as
Yeah.
these things go.
Mhm.
Um, but we do get our Hulk. We get our Hulk in the middle of the fashion show.
Yeah.
Which of course is always, it's this idea that I think the writers always try to find when they decide to do a piece, and
Mhm.
so much of Hulk is genre specific, whether it's a cop show or a prisoner show or a
Mhm.
race car show or a football show or a
Mhm.
fashion show.
Mhm.
I do feel that the writers intend to say, well, what if the Hulk walked down a runway?
Yeah.
As much as what if the Hulk was in a race car or what if the Hulk was in a wrestling ring? It is always what if the Hulk was on the runway at Fashion Week, and that is what we get here.
Yeah. Yeah.
But somehow it doesn't hurt the sales. I'll tell you that much.
No. Yeah.
Because people love the
Yeah.
spectacle. What can you say? Uh,
Yeah.
and let's not forget, torn jeans were about to become a really big thing.
See, there you go. That's where
See,
they got that idea
so
from.
I'm gonna headcanon that right now. It was like,
Mhm.
those torn jeans on the green guy looked really good. Can I get some of those
Yeah.
from my store? And like Liz is like, yeah, torn jeans. I could rip some jeans up for you, I guess. And it's like, so they start tearing up the jeans, and that is how they made their millions. They were the torn jeans kings of New York
New
City,
York.
and it's all because of David Banner.
There you go.
Now remind me, does David come back at the end, or does this end with people talking about how awesome David was?
No, he comes back at the
He
end.
does come
And
back at the end.
they have a photo shoot
Yeah.
of her models and her fashions.
Mm-hmm.
And they offer to take David to the bus. And he says, no, it's okay. I can handle it. All the best to everybody. And off he goes and hitchhikes down the road.
Yeah, because not for nothing, David does need to maintain that anonymity.
He
And
does.
and it's like, if they do drive him to the bus, and someone says, "Well, was anyone here?" and people are going to say, "Oh yeah, that guy. I drove him to the bus. What bus did he get on? Oh, I think he got on the 73 to Passaic. Okay, well, so it's more breadcrumbs for Jack McGee.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I get that, and that's one of the reasons I think David does refuse the kindness of strangers so much, because he does realize how much that kindness can cost him in the end.
Exactly.
Exactly. So David moves on, and we cue the Lonely Man music, and but at the same time, of course, the fashion house is saved. So the Hulk did his part for that, and like I said, it's totally headcanon now that the Incredible Hulk started the entire ripped jeans thing that exists to this day somehow.
Yeah. Well, I think possibly I'm going to spearhead a contradiction to that statement, only because the vertical tears probably weren't very popular. So Sam and Liz decided, what about horizontal tears? There you go.
There you go.
Fixes that problem.
Well, it's the vertical tears never really work, but it's that knee. It's the knee
They work
break.
for skirts.
Well,
Vertical tears work for skirts.
Well,
Gives you that whole cave woman look.
But
Yeah.
it's the knee. Well, we're talking about pants, and it's the knees and the pants, the tear in the knees and the pants. That seems to be the thing. Although it never ceases to amaze you how many in this day and age,
Mm-hmm.
cuts in
Yeah.
cloth. And it's like,
I don't. And you have to buy those that way.
I know, and it's weird to
Can't
me
wait
because it's like,
5 years for a knee to bust out or.
oh, well, but I mean, now they actually have it all up the thigh, and not for nothing, just
Yeah.
because, I mean, it always, I mean, when I look at it, I think, oh, wow, I got a friend who's a cutter. It's like, gee, that's a little spooky on a certain level, when you have all those uniform cuts along it. It's like,
I want to look as though my pants could fall off at any minute from wear and tear,
yeah.
and by God, I want to pay $400 for them in the process.
Yeah, well, but hey, that keeps Brandeis Fashions in business, so good for Brandeis. I will say I'm always a little uncomfortable when they have Jewish characters named Brandeis, just because it's like the most famous Jewish guy in American history, Supreme Court Justice Brandeis. But I'll give him a pass on this. So I enjoyed this episode for the most part. Like I said, I liked the fact that it was a family drama separated from David.
Yes.
And I do think that sometimes that's the best episodes is when they do have that story that doesn't require David, even when David is helpful.
Yeah. Even when he's there, he really isn't needed.
Oh, yeah. Any final thoughts on tonight's episode, 80s Music Girl?
Well, funny you should ask. I really enjoyed the long opening to our episode today. It's the rising of the sun, and then you're pulling it back, and then it's a little bit more light. Oh, it's morning, and look at all of the aerial shots. You can even see the helicopter blades in the shades, shadows, and we know that this is New York because, by God, there's so much stock footage of New York and pushing garments across the street and showing fabricated stores that nobody ever heard of. And, it was comical. But then again, it set up the plot to the story.
Yeah.
So I'm poking fun. But it was interesting because I, remembered being in New York during that time, and there wasn't nearly. I was a little disappointed. There wasn't enough taxi cabs on the road. They could have did at least 50 more taxi cabs in those shots.
To be fair, it's
by
early.
God, they owned those cities back then. I don't know if they do
early,
now.
and the bars do close at 4, and by now it's 6.
Yeah. So, but yeah.
So, even if you went home with someone, you may not need the cab right at 6. I mean, yeah, and that's assuming you actually closed the bar before you went home with someone, which in New York is kind of sad.
Even in itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like it's 4 in the morning. It's like, oh, you're left. Oh, I guess we gotta, yeah.
Working too long.
So I can see maybe fewer cabs on the road right at 6 a.m. And for
I'll
what
give
it's
you
worth, I do like that stock footage. Here's where we are. I actually think for
I didn't say I didn't like it. I just thought it was a lot of it, and it was very impacting. Yes, we are in New York City. Damn it.
Yeah.
There's Fashion Street in 7th. I know exactly where that is.
I do as well. There's actually a big needle and button there now.
Wow. See, now I got to come back.
Oh, yeah, we're all about monuments in New York City now because it's all for the tourists. New York City is basically a Disneyland in which people live now.
It's the people that live there don't give a shit.
Well, you know what? Well, at this
Let's just
point,
put the cards on the table.
Honestly, it's a weird thing because, at this point, the people that actually live there, well, we're not going to get into a whole conversation on gentrification today, but,
Yeah.
Although Manhattan has it's like way beyond gentrification. It's not like middle class people moving out, lower middle class people. It's like, it's like corporations moving out human beings, and like at this point, it's only like Saudi princes and princes of other groups that own property in what we think of as Manhattan. Now, there's still places where you can find a place to live in the Isle of Manhattan, but like most people, you start to wonder, why would I live in Manhattan for $1,000 a day rent when I could live in Jersey City for $1,000 a month rent?
Exactly.
What are you gonna do?
That's sad.
But
That's very.
I do, I actually like when they have, because they do use a lot of stock footage in The Incredible Hulk.
Yeah.
Because they have so much at Universal Studios. They just have a ton of this footage. It's like, there you go, use it. As much as, I like when it is actually used to invoke a place. And I do feel that it invoked the place.
It did. Once again, people from New York, not making fun. I love New York just as much as everybody. But, when you see so much of, a scene being enveloped in stock footage and sunrises and aerial shots, it was just like, get on with the plot already.
Fair enough.
What are you doing, a documentary? Okay.
By the way, I did forget to give our director and writer credits this evening. This episode was directed by Nick Havinga, and of course the writers were Kenneth Johnson, who always gets the credit because he developed the series, and of course Ruben Letter. It's nice to see that we have a guy who doesn't have to share the credits like 16 times with everyone else.
That is good.
Just seeing what else Ruben Letter has done. Oh, wow. Oh, he wrote the entire 90s Flipper reboot. He wrote a lot of episodes of Kung Fu, yes.
Wow.
Yeah, and he did a couple episodes of Next Generation. Oh, he did a bunch of Magnum PIs. And wow, this is actually his second episode of The Incredible Hulk, and he has 3 more episodes, including our very next episode, Patterns. Not Patterns, The Phenom. Sorry, I'm looking.
Did he do that? Yeah.
He did write The Phenom. Yeah, that's right there. I clicked the wrong link. The Phenom. So we'll talk about that next week.
Yes, we will.
80s Music Girl, if folks would like to reach out to you, how can they find you?
Well, I'm in Washington State, so I'll have to get on a bus or hitchhike. But I'm kidding. I am 80s Music Girl on Twitter and 80s Music Girl on Instagram and 80s Music Girl on Facebook.
Okay. And of course, you'd like to write to me in that old-fashioned email way, the way our mas and pas once did. Write to me at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, at gmail.com. And of course, follow me on the Twitters as I live tweet various things sometimes when I feel like it. Don't ask. At Charlie Esser, that's CharlieEsser. Look for the 2 E's in the middle for quality. Thank you, Rose, for joining me, and thank you, fair listeners, for joining us once again for the Gamma Cast.
We hope you've enjoyed this show. This podcast is part of the 80s Reboot Overdrive channel on Southgate Media Group. You can follow us on Facebook on the 80s Reboot group page. We're also on Twitter and Tumblr at 80s Reboot. We invite you to check out all the wonderful podcasts and blogs available at southgatemediagroup.com. And thank you for reliving the 80s.